Hello and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Tricia O'Malley and Alan. I'm Tricia, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams, learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. Currently, I'm privileged to work on the KDP University team, helping authors use the KDP website to make the most of their author journey. But enough about me. We're here to talk to Tricia and Alan. New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestselling author Tricia O'Malley lives in the Caribbean, where she spends much of her time underwater, dreaming up new stories while photographing the beautiful sea life. Tricia loves fun vacation reads, believes in mermaids, and has a serious travel addiction. She discovers her inspiration on the go, and you can find her books set in beautiful settings with characters who deserve a happily ever after. With over 2 million books read, Tricia's stories have touched hearts around the world. Tricia is joining us today with her partner and business manager, Alan. Welcome, Tricia and Alan.
Good morning, Tricia. Hello.
Good morning. There you go. It's always challenging, I think, at the first time trying to get the timing right to get the cameras and audio going, right?
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you. This is such a pleasure to be able to have the author and business manager here because you work on very different parts of the business.
We do. Yes.
And Tricia's not interested in the majority of my side of the business, so.
I do get a little, when it comes to spreadsheets, I'm just like, stay away.
Yeah, I get a little hissy at them too.
Yeah.
I quite often have to send her like little puppies or baby otters at the start of anything that has a spreadsheet in it, just so that I know that she'll engage and actually read the email.
Yeah, he hooks me in with the cute photos and then I get slammed to spreadsheets.
Whatever works, right? So let's start with you, Tricia. How'd you get started in writing? Where did this passion come from?
So I've always been a very avid reader, and there were definitely times in my life where I kind of like floated the idea of writing a book, but I was very much entrenched in the corporate world and my mind was sort of over on that side of things. And then I really had what we would call an inciting incident, which is my dog got stolen. So that ended up kind of changing the direction of my life. So my dog was stolen, and there was about 3 weeks of just kind of craziness around it where we had like death threats and psychic interventions, and we rescued another dog along the way, and I did get my dog back, and I was just so kind of moved by the story that I thought, you know what, I'm going to write about this. And maybe I'll help someone else in a similar situation. And that was as much as I thought about it. So I queried agents, and then I just kind of like drew a line in the sand that if after this date, because I just started hearing about self-publishing at that time. So I thought if nobody wants it, I'm just going to learn how to do this. And so I did the NaNoWriMo, I wrote the book, and then I sat down with, at the time it was Guy Kawasaki had a book called Author, Publisher, Entrepreneur. And I just took it to the coffee shop with me every day, taught myself how to do it, and then just published the book. And 9 months later, after I continued to, I tried to advertise a little bit every week and was like following all the forums. I hit the New York Times bestsellers list after an advertising run. And then I went, okay, now what? Because I had written a story that I knew exactly what had happened. And I didn't think, well, at least I hoped that my dog wasn't going to get stolen again. Right. And so sort of like, what do I write now? And it took me a bit after that to give myself permission to write sort of the books of my heart, which is more the contemporary romance and the sort of escapism type books. But that's how I got started.
Wow. It's kind of one of those things where the truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, going through all of that in 3 weeks, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was, it was great because I was able to, I donate all proceeds of that, my first book, to animal shelters, and we were able to raise awareness there, but then also it sort of made me really look at the fact that I really enjoyed writing a book and that I could consider this as an actual career path for myself. And so it was a really big pivot in my life from sort of, you know, corporate path to, wait a minute, you can be doing something else. And so it was ended up being a very good thing in my life, though the initial incident was traumatizing.
Absolutely. It would be horrific.
Yeah.
So how long did you do this? I mean, how many books did you publish before you decided, okay, the business aspect of this is necessary, but it's not my favorite, and then looped in Alan?
Oh gosh, I was doing fairly well. I was a six-figure author at that time. I had maybe 20 books out when you came in. No,
maybe a little less.
Little less than that. And so Alan has a background in marketing and business, and he just loves numbers and, you know, the cost per clicks and all the advertising stats that I have zero interest in. And I was doing a lot of the advertising, but I wasn't doing enough at that time. So really my advertising was falling more in, you know, doing book blogs and newsletters and things like that. And I was only had like dipped my toe into the AMS ads and the Facebook ads and all of that. And I kind of at the time had decided that I really needed to focus on what was most important, because otherwise you get really sort of burnt out. You can easily, I have to do this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. And so I had decided writing the next book, building my newsletter list, and engaging with my readers. Those were the three things. So I kind of let the other stuff just fall away because that's what needed my attention. And so then having someone like Alan come in who's actually interested in running the campaigns and doing all the
I don't think you expensed anything in the first 3 years of your business, but you were very well established.
Yes.
And from a marketing point of view, it was an easy job because it was such a good product, and you'd already hit the New York Times bestseller, which is a nice little tagline to have.
Yeah.
Right. Does that actually, so we've heard mixed reviews about when authors hit the New York Times bestseller, one of the bestseller lists. Does that actually help? Does that, just using that tagline, does that bump you up in search results or help with marketing or anything?
I believe it does, just because initially when I first hit, I got a lot of interest on that particular book from foreign publishers and various things like that. And so it did drum up some interest. I wouldn't say there was, you know, a huge spike in sales, but it does offer this credibility. And then I went on to hit the list 4 other times, and so it sort of cemented that. And I don't think readers, you know, they're not going to not pick up a book if it doesn't have that sort of credibility over the author name. I think readers are more interested in, you know, is it a beautiful cover? Is it an enticing blurb? But it helps a little bit. I think it adds a layer.
Okay.
It's definitely social proof, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Right. So Alan, what was one of the first things that you did when you took over the business aspect of the publishing?
So I tried to dive into the industry. So I hadn't read many romance books before I'd met Tricia. So I definitely had to find my way there. So I think my first Facebook campaign, I was like, well, Stone Song has dragons in it. I'll put a nice big, I like dragons. I'll put a nice big picture of a dragon on there. And that was not quite the demographic we were going for. So yeah, so finding out our demographic, learning the other authors in the space. And then Tricia had Mark Dawson's course. So I hadn't, although I'd done marketing before, I'd not done it in that space. So I sort of absorbed everything he had to say on the Facebook advertising side.
And then I often will test ad copy and photos. Like I'll hold up and say, okay, which one? And if he likes that one, I'm like, okay, then we're going with this one. So he's like my what I can base against. Like, okay, not my market. Okay, I'm going for that.
Yeah, the creative side's not my strength. We've actually passed over the Facebook ad to a consultancy company now. So I like AMS because it's numbers, and I can understand that, and I don't have to worry about colors and all the variables. I can just, okay.
Well, speaking of colors, Tricia, you did some A/B testing on a rebrand for some of your covers. Is that correct?
I did.
Can you talk through that a little bit?
So I had, this was probably about 4 or 5 books into my Cozy Mystery series, which is the Alethea Rose series. And I liked the covers that I had, but I just felt like I needed, I don't know, like wasn't where I wanted it to be. And the series was performing okay. And I guess it's a little bit hard too, because romance sells so differently sometimes than Cozy Mystery. So I had 2 different variables that I was looking at. But I ended up talking to my designer and getting some new covers done. And then we ran a series of tests. It was on BookBub, wasn't it? Or was it on Facebook at all?
No, BookBub.
So we ran it on the BookBub ads platform. So not the newsletter one where you sign up and go out, but like the paid ads you can do at the bottom. And then ran to see which of the covers would get more click-throughs. And then that helped cement my decision to rebrand the whole series.
So what kind of, what surprised you the most when you ran that?
That there was such a big difference, even if everything was the same on the cover, and maybe we just turned, so font was the same, pictures were the same, but we changed the color, that there would be such a big variance just in the color. So like the small details. And I think the reason we used BookBub for it was to minimize any variables. Like, so if we did it on Facebook, you don't know if the post above is a news story or a kitten or another advert. So with BookBub, we figured it's going out to the same audience. They're getting the same email, so that limits what the person is seeing. So that would minimize our variables.
Yeah.
Right. So what was the result? I mean, did you see a marketed increase in sales after the rebranding, or was it just a continued steady?
We did see an increase.
Yeah, there's a good, it wasn't like 4 times or anything like that, but there was a good increase, and I think it worked.
So it worked.
Yeah.
But once again, the cover is kind of off-brand for the genre. So it's a paranormal cozy mystery, and it looks a little bit like Jana Ivanovich's. So that's the only other kind of who's a genre in herself. But.
It's a very text-heavy cover, and so a lot of the cozy mysteries are have like cartoon images and that kind of stuff, and really just like a font-heavy style covers, but they work well for me. Like I have a tendency not to follow genre norms for my covers at all. And I don't want to advise people do it because that can make it really tricky to sell, but it's worked for me.
Yeah, advice is to do the exact opposite of that.
I know.
Tricia's like, here's my book cover, over to you, good luck.
Well, I think that's a great call out, and it's something that we keep talking about over and over again. Just because it works for one author doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for another, because your writing style is a little different, and you especially cross all sorts of genres.
Under the same name as well, which often isn't advised either.
Another fun one for finding the right target.
So like with my book Wild Irish Heart, it's consistently in the top of the paranormal romance, but it has an Irish cottage on the front, and it is paranormal, but it's next to demons and shifters and vampires and all like the bare-chested covers, and then you just see like my little Irish cottage in the middle. But exactly, I guess, somewhat what you're getting. It's a very Irish Celtic themed paranormal, so and I think one of the reasons I didn't switch pen names between genres was most of my books have that sort of, it's like a lighthearted escapism, fun, romance, and even in the cozy mystery, like the tones kind of stay the same. So I just thought, my audience, even if they don't cross over, like it's pretty similar. And I found a lot of my readers end up crossing over. And even when I start new series, sometimes they wait. They like wait to see like, okay, is she gonna keep writing in this series? And they'll wait to like book 4, and they're like, all right, okay, I'm gonna try it.
Well, let's talk about writing in series. Now, you've got 4 series, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And you also have some standalones.
Yes.
So let's talk about the difference in marketing a series in standalones. So Alan, I think this probably goes to you. How much easier is it to market a series versus a standalone?
Almost infinitely, I would say, because for the first, so we used to have permafreeze for the first in series, and then as the advertising expenses kind of creeped up and Facebook and AMS, everything's starting to get a bit more expensive. We've switched to sort of either full price or slightly discounted first in series, and I funnel pretty much everything into the first in series. We have a few, our ads are sort of defense ads. I use the newest book in the series because I hate it when I Google Tricia's name and 2 of the same book comes up and the first one's sponsored, and I then have to go through all my auto ads and figure out why that happened. But yeah, so everything kind of funnels into that first in series. With standalone, your first one that we marketed. I
didn't make it easy for him at all.
Yeah, she threw it
a swear word on the cover, which I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say on YouTube or not. So, but it's Miss B. Let's just call it that.
Miss B. So that was another element which just made, I wasn't allowed to use AMS. I had to be very careful on Facebook, so I wasn't allowed to use the front cover. I wasn't allowed to use the name of the book. So that was a challenge. So, but what I found worked best for the first in series is the back matter of the other series. So whatever the newest book is, I'll put the first chapter of our first in series in the back, and every time we have a big release, I'll see a huge uptake in the first for the standalone as well. So that was the best way to get a good return on investment. So it's not costing me anything. But yeah, when we're doing AMS on a standalone, it can be tricky. You just got to be a little bit tighter.
I don't want him to get just complacent. I like to keep him on his toes, so I like to just throw the standalones in to drive him nuts.
Well, you wouldn't want it to get boring.
Right, of course.
So we get a lot of new authors that talk about, we've talked about learning the business, and they come in here and they're like, where do you go to learn the business? So you talked about, I think, Alan, in the interview, you talked a little bit about different tools that you pull from in order to get information to learn the business. And I just want to preface this, that this is what you guys have found successful, and that Amazon doesn't endorse any one particular path. So I'm going to toss it over to you.
Okay, I'm not affiliated with anyone either, so these are just personal experiences. But one of the things that I did find was a massive overwhelm in information, which is probably better than when it first started and there wasn't a lot of information. But there's just so many people out there claiming to be influencers, and it's difficult to, you can end up spending your whole day trying to learn everything. So I do like to do just in time, because at the start I wanted to learn, okay, how am I going to market the audiobooks? How am I going to market paperbacks? How are we going to do copyright? And I would just end up learning and getting nothing done. So I'd say try and focus on one thing at a time. And AMS is now the one that I really like to drill into. I did do a breakdown that I spent about 40% of our ad spend on AMS. We've got a big chunk that goes to AMG, that's Amazon Marketing Group, and then Facebook's only around 10%, and then everything else is about 4%. But yeah, so what I liked is Mark Dawson, so I learned through him, and then the other guys I like are David Gaughran, Dave Chesson, and Alex Newton. So especially Dave Chesson and Alex Newton are very kind of focused on niche areas. I do like to check if anybody's coming in with information. I'll have a quick check of their books to see how they're doing. But I think these guys are very niche when it comes to their information. So their expertise they're not authors first and foremost. They're more like kind of industry specialists. So
Yeah.
I think they're the guys. So, and there's a lot of free information that you can get from there.
Right.
That's very useful.
And they cover a lot of the, to your point, AMS ads. They cover genre. They cover keywords. So there's a lot of good information out there.
Yeah. Mark Dawson, if you're looking for just a one-stop shop, he kind of does everything. It is an investment for his course, but then it continual updates as well. So it's nice. So you always just have that. If you need to do something, you have that one place you can go to and get the most relevant information.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like online, so 20 books to 50K. They have that's my favorite Facebook sort of group, just because it's really professional in there, and they really push about using the search engine to find your answers. So a lot of the other author-focused ones, you're going to see the same questions just come up and up time and time again. And I used to sort of, help and answer some questions, but then after a while, I just left the groups because it was the same thing coming up. Whereas 20 books is going to give you good relevant questions and a lot of good free information out there as well.
They do. Go ahead, Tricia.
On my side, like for writers who are starting out, there's some good books. Like if you can't necessarily invest in classes yet, there's definitely some forums and, as he's saying, the Facebook groups. But some of the books I like are, Libby Hawker has one called, I believe it's Take Off Your Pants or Take Your Pants Off. It's really about how to outline your book. So if you're just even starting there and not sure how to go about it, it's not a very long book, but it's really well done. So that's a good resource just to get the actual product together. And then there's, I think, Let's Get Digital is another good book. Newsletter Ninja is a good book for if you're writing, like wanting to learn how to put your author newsletters together. Mm-hmm. And that's something you want to start building right from the beginning. So there's a few business things like that where you just want to, I think mainly more than anything, even with my very, very first book, I treated this like a business. So I had a website for the book. I started a newsletter. I, had a cover that was, actually, that's probably the most appropriate cover I have, that very first book. But everything I did a Facebook group, all of it, right from the beginning. Even when you have nobody following you or no interest, start it then, because if you treat yourself seriously, other people will start to as well.
Right. And doing that business right away, that's key. I think some people forget that it's art, but then you have to sell this too. So You've got to marry the two of them together.
Yes, it becomes a product.
Yes, exactly. Now, a few months ago or a little while ago, you changed your release strategy, right?
Yes, we did.
That was a bit of a game changer. So we did a mix of things. From sometimes it was just we just dropped the book, and sometimes it was like a 2-week pre-order. But so marketing a first in series is tricky. Finding somebody that's 6 books in and read the book 6 months ago and finding them again.
Yeah.
If you've not got them on your Facebook page or a newsletter, that's even trickier. So what we've done is for every release that goes out, we make sure there's a pre-order at the back there. So that we're using the long pre-orders, usually about 8 months.
Well, and Amazon just changed that. That was a big thing too. When Amazon allowed the longer pre-order, that really helped, because that forced us before, in a 3-month window? Mm-hmm. Now they went to a year.
And so that just gives the reader, as soon as they've finished, they're feeling good, they're feeling happy, just had an awesome experience, and they click that little pre-order. And that also allowed us to, I think, 5 out of the last 6 releases have hit the USA Today bestseller, because we release wide before going into KU, and with the long pre-orders on all the wide vendors, that's made that just happen.
Yeah.
So how often do you release?
I typically aim for 4 books a year. This year I've done a little bit more, just with having more time at home and just being a little bit more inspired. So I think I've written 5 this year, and I have writing another one now. So, but generally my comfort zone, I like to release 4 books a year.
Okay. So that timing works, right? So if you're doing about 6 to 8 months, you actually have a couple books in between.
And I hop between series. So I know it drives some other authors crazy. They have to just finish out their series and it's done. But I'm like, oh, let's go to this world, and let's go to this world, and let's go to that world. And so that like allows me to have those longer pre-orders, because then it's like, okay, we've all visited Ireland. Now let's hop on over to my Siren Island series and visit the Caribbean. And like, so I just keep my readers kind of bouncing around.
Now, you said that you release wide and then you go into KU. What's the timing look like for that? That's an unusual strategy.
So we do it about a month or so, a month to 6 weeks wide, and then go into Kindle Unlimited. And part of it is we only went into Kindle Unlimited about 1.5 years ago, and one of the series has been in almost two years. But it was largely because some of my readers who have been with me forever aren't reading on a Kindle, and so you want to give them a chance to get the book as well. And so it's just a way, and the way to appease all the readers. And if I get a few people saying, how come your other books are in Kindle Unlimited and this aren't, I just respond and comment and explain that it will be in a couple months or, a couple weeks, don't worry. So they just have to, the KU readers just have to wait a little bit longer.
What kind of, sorry, go ahead.
That's probably definitely the negative, that we do get like the occasional 1-star where we've just not, we've maybe not communicated to the reader that it will be in KU, but it's going to be next month.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha. So what kind of change did you see once you started putting your books in Kindle Unlimited?
We saw a really big increase in sales and page reads. So since the time that I went out into Kindle Unlimited, I'd already had my Cozy Mystery series and it was doing good, but I hadn't tested any of the romance. And that was right as the pandemic was hitting. And I just thought, well, people are going to be on a budget and watching, their money. So why don't we try out Kindle Unlimited and just see how that goes. And from the get-go, I've been a Kindle All-Star author right from the get-go, but I'd already had, all of the social proof built up in a few of the longer running series. And so I was a 6-figure author at the time. And then after going into KU, I'm now a 7-figure author. So it has ramped up my income.
Yeah, and that first series we put in, it didn't grab us straight away because it made a little bit more money, but it did cannibalize the unit sales a little bit. So the KU reads were there right from the start, but I did see a big downturn in unit sales. So we didn't jump in straight away. But yeah, when we put the romance books in there, it was definitely a leveling up moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're just, it's different audiences too. You have to look at your KU readers are almost a different marketplace than the people who are buying your books. And so you have to just kind of be aware of both marketplaces.
Right. All right. We've got a bunch of questions that are coming in. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit and start taking some of these questions.
Okay.
So we have, what marketing did you use with your first book about the dog?
Oh gosh, so that was very like grassroots marketing. I mean, so to get just some eyes on it, every week I was reaching out to animal groups on Facebook, and I wrote an article for, I think it was Animal Wellness magazine, about your dog getting stolen. So each week I would just make a list and reach out to several of the groups and say I'll give a ebook away for free, or I'll write about this. So it was more of almost like a little bit of an advocacy, like trying to raise awareness for that. And then on the run that hit the New York Times, it was a BookBub centered advertising campaign. And then I just did a ton of the other newsletters and book blogs along with it, and just built a whole campaign around it, as much of my money at the time that I could throw at it. And it took off from there.
Nice. Did you ever use a marketing team early on, or was that all you did all the heavy lifting?
No, it was all me. So after the stolen dog, I was like just following the forums. Like K-boards was really big back then. So I was on K-boards and I was watching what other authors were doing in the genres that I wanted to write in. And so I was just kind of studying them. And then for like 6 or 7 months, I just wrote under a pen name, shorter stories, and I just started releasing on my own, and I was following the advice on K-boards. And so I teach myself how to do covers, blurbs, finding my voice. And then once I was making about $1,000 a month, I gave myself permission to like go out under my name. And I started that series. That was the Mystic Cove series. I started that with, I released a freebie prequel novella and 2 full-length novels at the same time, and then followed up like every 2 to 3 months with another novel in the series that first year. And then a year later, I ran another BookBub campaign. They accepted my first in that Mystic Cove series as a freebie run. And I put as much money as I could with advertising there, which wasn't a lot. Like it was just, again, those little like $10 newsletters, $20 newsletters, everything. But that took off because then they had the freebie gave to a read through. And that was my first, I think I made like $70,000 that month. And I went, oh my gosh, this is actually going to be a career. I mean, this was, 1 year into writing fiction. And I went, okay. And that was my first 6-figure year as an author. So it was really just, there was no marketing team. It was just me learning.
Right. What is the biggest mistake you made early on?
Oh gosh.
Or recently, either way.
Biggest, if you want, probably the biggest marketing faux pas. Well, you learn from everything you do, but we tried for Miss Bitch, the book that we weren't allowed to advertise anywhere. We tried doing some advertising through podcasts. So we had
that's pricey.
It was pricey. It was on I think the targeting's tricky. So it was on some, what was the podcast? It was something to do with yeah. Anyway, so we did the podcast, and I think we got maybe 3 or 4 sales from a four-figure budget, which that was tough. Not that it wouldn't work for you, but it didn't work for us.
Right.
There was another instance early on where it was learning to double check my work and find the right people to work for me. So being able to say no to editors that weren't working well with me, or sometimes an editor's opinion isn't what is right for your story. So you have to take it as just a suggestion, and ultimately the book is your story. But one of the people that I hired at the time was to do my formatting for ebooks, print books, everything. This was before we started using Vellum, and Alan does that now. But she had used a template of my ebook so it was like book 2 she had done, and I was releasing book 3. I sent it to her to format, and she formatted it, and I sent her the final manuscript. So I didn't think I had anything else to do, and I just kind of just briefly flipped through, looking at just the front matter and the back matter, uploaded it. Well, all of my readers went to as soon as they got to chapter 14, they were like, what happened in chapter 14? She had kept a chapter from the previous book and had put it in that manuscript for the next book. And so that was a huge, I had to try to contact anyone who had that book. I had to republish everything, fire her. So it was one of those things that teaches you to just do a little bit more of your due diligence before you, ultimately at the end of the day, it's your product and it's your responsibility. It doesn't matter if you handed something final off to someone, it still comes back to you.
Yeah. proofreading, you can't do enough of it. And
I'll still get through.
So you're saying if something goes wrong, it's never my fault.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
it's amazing. Grab that one, put it in the back pocket for later.
He wanted that on public record.
Yeah. Do you get reviews anywhere? Like, do you send out advanced reader copies to get reviews so you can use that in your marketing?
Yes, we do. So I have a smaller kind of core group of like super fans that have been with me from the beginning that I just have direct email addresses with in a little group. And so I always send to them, and then I've expanded my ARC team a little bit to some newer readers as well. And we usually send it out and just ask for, you know, any sort of feedback that they have on it, or if they find any typos or anything like that. And yeah, it goes well. And then we pull some quotes from people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're awesome. And then we released the paperback about a week or so before the ebook, just to start building up those reviews.
If they want to review.
Okay, gotcha. Do your romance sell better than your cozy mysteries?
Yes, significantly so.
Why do you think that is? Do you have any?
I don't know necessarily. Well, honestly, I think it's just a bigger market. Like the romance market itself is much larger than the cozy mystery. So it's, I think, the market. And then I just, again, have that lighthearted escapism kind of vibe that people are looking for. They want a little bit of humor, they want a little bit of fun. And so I think my books can be a little, I guess people have said they're kind of addictive. They just binge right through them. So.
Right. Yeah. I think, and this is hypothetical and I have absolutely nothing to back this up, but I have a theory that romance authors are binge readers. They like, they'll grab everything and just like burn through it.
Yes, 100%. Although when I am writing romance, or like I won't read any type of romance similar to what I'm writing, because I never want to like accidentally cannibalize steal from someone else's work. So I'll read something like historical, or, you know, or then I'll go read the cozy mysteries, or, you know, I bounce between genres and stuff. But if I'm in the middle of writing paranormal romance, I don't read paranormal romance. So I go elsewhere for that. But I binge for sure.
I think that's a great tip. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that, but it makes total sense to me.
Yeah. Because we all take stuff from our lives and what we're absorbing. And I mean, I get a lot of like kind of interesting stuff from either my travels, or we live in a small island in the Caribbean and it's a tourist hotspot, and you do meet a lot of different people. And so I'm kind of always like listening over to the fence to people, like the tourists and the vibes, and like I pull stories from a little bit of everywhere. And so it all comes in, and that's why you have to be careful, I think, what you're reading at the time you're.
Yeah. So we have a question. Being from the Caribbean, this person is also living in the Caribbean. Was there any issues that you had setting up the account for the banking, since you're not in the U.S. mainland?
No, so the way it is structured is we have our company is headquartered in Florida. So we have an LLC, and it is in Florida, so we don't pay state income taxes because neither of us are living there. And I do have a bank account in the States, and so it all runs fairly smoothly. And then essentially I just, I'm operating like a division of my company while I'm on island. And so that's sort of how that works. And then we just have a local bank account as well, and we can transfer money down as needed.
So what that says to me is find a good accountant.
Yes, yes. We have a very expensive international accountant.
Good accountants usually mean expensive as well.
Don't get him started. Every time that bill comes in, he gets.
But have a look, to answer the question, have a look at TransferWise. I think it's now called Wise, and you can set up, because I know for somebody not living in the States, it's very difficult to set up an American bank account, but Wise will allow you to set up like kind of a floating bank account, and you can set them up in the UK or Canada and around the world. So I don't know if KDP accepts that as a way to pay, but if your island also uses dollars, that might be a solution to get paid into Wise, and then you can get a debit card and take it out like that.
Mm-hmm. And again, check with an accountant on that one. That's
Yeah.
it. I always tell people, check with the accountant on all of this. Let's see. Where do you get your illustrations? Do you have a team that does your book covers, or an artist that does your illustrations, or?
So for a large portion of my Irish series, so the Mystic Cove series and the Stone Song, or the Isle of Destiny series, those are actually photographs I took in Ireland and then had my cover designer kind of like, what do you call it? Cartoonize, posterize them. They kind of make them look a little cartoony.
Yeah.
So a lot of those, not all of them, but a big chunk of them are my own photographs for those series. And then the other designers, we use Demonza for some, and Demonza's great, and they pull from their own illustrations and stock images.
Gotcha. Do you do cliffhangers, or can each of your books be read as a standalone?
I do not do cliffhangers. I think actually the first time ever I did one in my cozy mystery, and it was a cliffhanger about one of the characters disappearing. I have a pirate ghost in that series, and so he disappeared, and so people had to read the next one to see if he came back. But the actual mystery and the premise of the entire book was resolved in that book. And then in romance, I do not do cliffhangers because each of my books are sort of standalone, set in the same world, and then you can like the old friends revisit in the new books and that kind of stuff. But I think romance readers are really looking for that payoff in the end. They want the happily ever after, and so I stick with that.
All right. We've got some questions about your routine. What does your routine look like for each of you as far as balancing the business with and the writing and the schedule? And because I know you like to get out in the water.
Yes, we're both big scuba divers. So this was something I did actually years ago. Was I designed in my head what I was working for, which was it wasn't just how much money I wanted to make. That wasn't really my definition of success. It was, what do I want my day to look like? So long before I ever ended up in the Caribbean, I had written down that I wanted to be able to get up and go scuba diving, grab a nice coffee, and then go write in the afternoon. And so I started working my life towards that. Like that was my goal. And so now that I'm here, I don't scuba dive every single day, but I have largely framed out my life that way. And so generally speaking, we get up and I have a coffee. I listen to Clubhouse in the morning. There's an author's chat on there. And then I have an office away from the house. And so I leave and go to my office to work. And then Alan has an office in the house. So we have completely separate spaces. Otherwise we drive each other crazy. Because like even Alan will have headphones on and I'm like, hey, question. He's like, headphones.
Right. Gotcha. And so you brought up an interesting point just a minute ago. Instead of looking at, what people think of success, and instead of saying, I want to be a six-figure author, you instead decided, I want my day to look like this. And that was your success.
Yes.
How long did it take you to make that transition and become that, complete that vision?
I would say, I think it was like 5 or 6 years. So I started that when I started writing my cozy mystery series. I have my main character is a psychic, but she's also an underwater photographer who lives in the Florida Keys. And so at the time I thought, I was living in Wisconsin and I thought the scuba diving is not great there unless you want to get in Lake Michigan dry suit on wrecks. And so I just thought I'm going to start sort of writing my life or not, like it wasn't writing my life, but it was writing like where I could go. Like I wanted to be able to expense trips to the Keys if I could for research. And I sort of started, that was way back at the beginning, and then I just started designing my life that way. But it took several years. And I think I even wrote Alan into my life. So people comment that he resembles the cute blonde scuba instructor in the Althea Rose series. So it was some strong manifesting on my part.
I'm going to say, there you go.
Who knows the powers I have?
Right. I keep thinking, now I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what do I want to write into my life? I'm going to have to adopt that.
And I do recommend, like, if you are going to expense research trips and things like that, which you can do for your writing, like I like to set my books in really beautiful locations, because if I'm going to go there to research them, let's make it a really cool spot.
Again, check with your account.
Check with your account.
There you go. We're going to have disclaimers throughout this entire interview, I think. Alan, do you work with other authors or just with Tricia?
Just with Tricia. So we do have a guest house on our island. So I like kind of head that up, and because of the last 18 months that we've not had too many guests or very many, so that's given me a lot more time to sort of head over into the love variety and looking after that. I have played around with there's a book called Red Season Rising, which is other side of the genre again. It's just like an epic fantasy, and it's a school friend of mine, and he wrote me into his book, which is always a good way to do it. But he's purely creative writing and is not interested in the marketing side. So I have talked about helping him out, and I think we'll do that in the future, but it's not something that it would be those two clients, I think.
He killed you off in the book too.
He did kill me off, but I ripped a guy's ear off and stabbed him before I died. So it was it was a good way to go. I was okay.
In retribution, I killed him off in one of my Althea Rose books.
That's a great thing about friends. It's like they don't take offense when you start offing them in books. All right, so we've got some questions about the difference between Kindle Unlimited and wide.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you define as wide? What does that look like for you?
That's selling on a bunch of different vendors like iTunes and Kobo and Barnes & Noble and Google Play and Draft to Digital and that kind of stuff. So
right. And then so you do that for about a month, and then you take them off of those platforms and then publish the ebook, or you put it in Kindle Unlimited at that point.
Yeah. And then of course you can always get print books and audiobooks. So it's just the ebook that goes into Kindle Unlimited. And then Kindle Unlimited's terms and services do require like a 90-day exclusivity. So you can cycle in and out. We haven't really tested that. So I know some people cycle 90 days in, 90 days out. We have not done that.
Gotcha.
Because Tricia sold wide for so long, we still have a really strong base on all the so on Barnes and Noble and iTunes especially. But the longer we do this, we will see a little bit of attrition because we aren't pushing anyone into the first in series. So it's just still the hardcore readers that were there from the start. We did plan on staying wide for our standalones, and we just KU, and KU is just, it's so strong just now. We wanted to stay wide and stay, but even the advertising, trying to like advertise directly to iTunes was tricky. I tried it on Facebook and I just wasn't getting the return that I saw.
So
you
we find what works for you. There you go.
Yeah, test. It's all about the testing.
Yeah.
Everybody, the different genres, different authors, different where you're doing your different marketing. Some things work for some and some don't. So you just have to continually test and continually learn. Yeah,
it's true. I know plenty of authors that do very well, wide, and others that are all KU. So it is truly down to, you have to see what's best for you.
And the nice thing is, I mean, you put it into KU for, 90 days or, 6 months or something like that. If it's not working, pull it back out and, put it back wide.
Right.
One thing I would say is there's no magic bullet, that I've found. So I think it's about, like Tricia said earlier, start off like with the attitude that you're going to be successful and this is a professional business, and have your website. Don't try to do it all at once. Maybe learn AMS to start. It's a little bit easier than Facebook advertising, and then expand. Like get to know one thing really well to start off with, and then move on. Like our audiobooks, I think is a real kind of opportunity for growth there. We have an amazing narrator called Amy Landon, and I've only just started listening to our audiobooks, and she did a great job on One Way Ticket. It was hilarious. But I had a look, and it's only 3% of our sales is our audiobooks.
Yeah, we gotta grow that.
So we need to grow those, and we've got 30 audiobooks. A lot of them are owned by Tantor just now, and we're having them reproduced. So that makes it tricky when we don't have the first in series.
Yeah.
So that's my next step. So I'm not doing everything all at once. So I'm gonna move on to audiobooks.
Yeah.
So that's a good call out. So you didn't self-publish your audiobooks.
No.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah. To start with, Tantor approached me, and at the time it just seemed like another learning curve for me, another thing that I needed to do. And I was still trying to just drill down on write the next book, build your newsletter, engage with your readers. And so when they approached, I said, absolutely. And they did a good job by it, but we're getting the rights back now, and we're going to do the rest on our own. So it was nice, and it certainly was profitable for me, but I prefer to now that we have a little bit more understanding of what we're doing, and I have a bit of a team now, I prefer to have that back in-house.
So if I'm a brand new author and I'm prioritizing, to Ellen's point and to Tricia, what you've talked about is that you can't learn everything at once. You need to prioritize and figure it out. What would kind of your priority list be as far as what do I need to learn first? What do I need to learn second? What do you think?
Write your next book, and then write your next book, because your voice gets stronger and every book you write gets better. And so more than anything else, the next book will sell the book before it. And so I know that's not always what people want to hear. They've just got their, shiny new product and it's out and it's amazing. And then you just want to, but honestly, it's writing the next book is in my opinion, the best thing you can do for your business. Just when you're starting out, build your catalog. So you might have an opinion for.
No, I agree, but also if you've got the one book, maybe just start with AMS and learn the basics. You can set up an auto ad in like 5 minutes and just have a low spending auto ad, just driving a little bit of traffic and start there. If you're not selling your books yet, you're not going to sell your audio, so don't put your budget there into making your ebook. Getting some reviews and getting some momentum there before you drop a few grand on an audiobook.
Yeah.
We've got some questions. Are you thinking about doing serial content that you're going to publish through Vella? Kindle Vella?
I've flirted with a few ideas, but I also have about 6 other books in my head right now, so I will probably go with the books first. But I can see the appeal of Vella to just have it, because there's that rush when you finish something. So it's like, it's done and it's out and it's done and it's out. So I can see the appeal where it would be kind of fun to do that. But right now I haven't specifically outlined anything for it, no.
We definitely had a few chats about it.
Yeah.
And like being an early adopter and something like that's probably like a great space to be in if you've not established yourself quite yet on in KDP. So
yeah.
Yeah, but when you're running a business, you have to prioritize, and like you said, you've got those other books in your head, so prioritizing that and going with what works, and then maybe dipping your toes in that later.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll write a book.
There you go.
Get it on Vella.
Don't ask me to market it.
We've got some questions about your newsletter. When you started building out your newsletter, where did you go for help? How did you determine how to make that effective?
Oh, well, so I had already had a bit of a marketing background in my previous job. So I already knew how to use did some like newsletter software, and I knew kind of like what was engaging, what wasn't engaging. So I just kind of started, I don't send them that often. It's, every couple weeks I send a newsletter, and I always include a look at island life. So I always include some like dive photos and just some photos of us. So people often just open it because they want to look at pretty photos. And then I just have a few other clips in there. I try to keep them short, interesting. And then I just have the signups, it was always on my Facebook page, in my back matter, on my website. And I would often run giveaways and that kind of stuff. And I don't do them the same way anymore right now, but for a long time I was doing really random giveaways, like photos from my trip to Ireland, or I would bring back a bunch of like Irish jewelry, and every time I would go over there and things like that. But shipping from the island, and it costs $100 to ship anything off island. So we are not running those type of giveaways as much anymore, but I do have an assistant that lives in the States, so I could be able to start shipping stuff to her, and she could ship out prizes like that. But giveaways, that kind of stuff also helps for newsletter signups.
Nice. All right, so we've got about 1 minute left. So I'm going to give you each an opportunity. If you want to leave other authors with just one bit of advice, what would it be? I know, no pressure.
The advice I would give is you absolutely can design the life that you want to have, and you can do that. Just break it down in small, actionable chunks. Like, it may seem overwhelming to write an entire book. So just do that, break it down, just write the chapter, write one chapter at a time. Don't think about writing the whole book. And then getting to the life that you want to live, just do what I did and break that down into little sections of what you want your day to look like. And then break it down smaller, like, how do I work towards just one part of that day? Mm-hmm. And you just got to make it a really small, actionable steps.
And for me, it would be, don't get lost in pseudo productivity, where you spend 2 hours going through Facebook posts thinking you're absorbing information and you're working. Like, pick one thing and pick one big thing each day and get it done. Jump in.
As Yoda would say, do or do not, there is no try.
Try. I was going to say, yeah, that paralysis by analysis is another part of it. Don't try to learn everything all at once, because that's all you're going to be doing is trying to learn instead of applying it.
Yeah, you're hoping that next course, that next YouTube video will have that little magic sauce that's going to make everything come together, but it's not. It's working on it every day. That's what makes it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so very much for joining us today. This is really exciting. I had so much fun.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, as always, everyone, happy publishing.
It was a pleasure, Tricia. Thank you. Bye.